Yes. Okay, hello everyone. My name's Laura. I'm a jigsaw clinician. I work up in Donegal, and I'm here along with my colleague Orla.
Yeah, so I'm Orla McLaughlin, and I'm a jigsaw clinician in Jigsaw Lee Shafley at the moment.
And I work in Jigsaw Donegal. So today we're here to talk to you guys a wee bit more around supporting young people, to be positive and to mind your and to be positive, managing motivation. So we're going to chat through a wee presentation first with you guys, and we're going to think about the theory that runs behind young people and what evidence we have so far. But we're also then going to think about how do we support young people during this time to remain positive and motivated. And maybe we'll have some questions then at the end.
And just before we start as well, just to say that we've had some kind of technical issues earlier this evening, just in relation to Wi-Fi and things like that. So if there's any glitches along the way, apologies in advance, but there will be a recording as well coming over the next few days, so you can look at that if there's any issues. And also you can type in any questions or chats into the chat box, and we'll get to them as we go along, or if we don't have time during the presentation, we'll get to it at the end and we can answer those questions then.
Yeah, so I suppose first things first, we want everyone to maybe have a wee think about how you've been doing as a parent in keeping positive, or as we like to talk about, balanced and motivated over the past few weeks, considering the restrictions that have been imposed or that's on us, and all the challenges that is faced with current COVID scenario. So if you could write a few words, even to take a moment to have a wee think about what you've been doing yourself and what has helped, and even write a few words into the text box, so we can have a review and maybe chat through some of that. So okay, so at the minute haven't just got any in, but I suppose it's a good way to think about how you've been coping yourself as a parent in this time, and what has been helping you keep going and keep positive during this challenging time. So someone has let us know that keeping busy with activities like gardening, supporting the community, so getting involved, staying active, great. It's been challenging, yeah. The weather has helped, and that's a lot of feedback that we've heard from young people as well. It's great. Okay. So if we were to think about young people and some of the theory that we already have around young people, and what they've told us in the past. Now, most of this is pre-COVID-19, but it's still relevant, although we may have to adapt and consider it. So this wee slide here is called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this is one of the basic theories around motivation and what we need to keep ourselves well. So if we look at the bottom, the most important need at the bottom that we have is the physiological need. So the idea of being safe, having somewhere to sleep, eat, having something to eat, having somewhere to sleep, staying warm, and those basic needs. The next piece is around safety. That could be financial safety, that could be general safety in our communities and where we live. Love and belonging, that being part of connected with someone, be that a family member, part of our community, be that other relationships in our life. Esteem, that feeling of achievement and feeling that we're progressing and achieving things, and self-actualization, that feeling of knowing ourselves and being comfortable in where we're at. So if we think about where we're at currently within COVID, at the moment there's a lot of work around keeping our physiological needs being met. And if we think about what the government and the restrictions are around keeping the shops open so that we can get food, and that we have there's hospitals and healthcare, and that basic physiological needs are there. However, for some that may be more difficult for them. If we think about the safety factors, that idea of staying safe, and maybe the government have put in things around that. We'll think about that may also have challenges to a young person's mental health if family member is maybe laid off, or there's challenges in the home or the community currently. And as we go up, there maybe is less opportunity for young people and ourselves to feel love and feel belonging, esteem, or self-actualization. But I suppose at the moment it's really important that the bottommost needs are being met, and that is super important, because when they're being met, the rest of them will come. So when we think about where we're at now, and when we come to a time where we have safety and the knowledge that our health is safe, that we have somewhere to stay, we have freedom, we will be fit to achieve more love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization, and so will young people. So that's one theory that we have, and that's sort of a basic enough theory. That's one of the basic theories that we would chat around what we as humans need in our lives generally. So what do we know from young people as to what helps them stay motivated and positive? So we did a wee bit of research, and we've thought about what do we already know, and what can we do to adapt with some of this. Sorry, Orla, I wanted to say, did you have anything to say on the the Maslow hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, just in the normal run of the day, or in the normal run of our lives, generally speaking, our physiological needs and our safety needs are being met, and our love and belonging. But that different life events at different times in our lives can cause us to fluctuate between the different levels. And it's not about every single need being met all of the time. It's just about focusing on, I suppose, the ones that are most prominent at that stage. And as Laura was saying, you know, I suppose the most important ones at this stage are making sure that we have everything we need from a physiological point of view and a safety point of view, and then it makes it easier for us to focus on the needs higher up in the hierarchy as time goes on. So yeah.
Yeah, super, thank you. Yeah, so moving on then, what do we know? As I mentioned, I kind of jumped the gun there. What we do know, if we were to think about young people and the stage of development that they're at, adolescence is the time where often young people want to separate from their parents. They want to seek more independence, they want to explore. They also want to take risks as well, and maybe don't see the impact of taking those risks, which can be challenging as well. So with the impact of COVID, young people are maybe being at home more, they're with their parents more, and that can pose challenges even where they're at in their lives. They want to get out and they want to be independent, but this current restrictions isn't allowing them to do that. I suppose also further, what else do we know? So Jigsaw, along with UCD, completed a large-scale survey last year in 2019, where there was a sample of nearly 10,500 young people aged between 12 to 19 years. It was also an older adult sample, but this sample that's, I suppose here we have, of those 12 to 19-year-olds, a really good positive is that 3/4 of them identified one good adult. Now, one good adult is someone who's in a young person's life that they can trust, that they can talk to, and they feel that it's safe and secure. And we'll chat to that a wee bit more as we go through the presentation. Orla has a piece on that. And you often see in a lot of our Jigsaw pieces that there is a lot of talk about the one good adult. But the one good adult, the impact of that it can be really great. The research from the My Word survey indicated that through having that one good adult, a young person's ability to cope, their optimism, their self-esteem is improved, and there's more resilience there for that young person. So their ability to be balanced and to bounce back is improved, which I suppose is extremely important during these most challenging times. So along with the one good adult, other factors that came out of that My World survey where young people told us what helped them was friends came high up that list, sports and exercise, music, sleep, family and parents, talking and video games. So this was taken pre-COVID-19, but I suppose if we were to think about how we would adapt some of that, some of it's not the change, some of it hasn't, most of it hasn't changed. It's just how we access, young people access this is very different, or can be different. So if we were to think about sport and exercise, exercise may not come in the form of traditional sports teams or clubs, but maybe it's around getting out and kicking a ball about or going for a run. So it's challenging that and adapting to that. The same with friends and peers are most likely still as important, but maybe they're doing a wee bit more phone time and the different types of Zooms and being creative about how they stay connected. Yeah, so that was kind of the main thing that young people told us back then, as to what, back then being less than a year ago, as to what helped them. And other information, I suppose we have been chatting to a lot of young people over the past few weeks that we have in our books. And we've been asking them about what's keeping them going, what's keeping them positive, what's getting them up in the morning to do what they need to do. And some of the anecdotal evidence, now this is just quite raw evidence, stuff that we're being told by young people, is things that's helping them keep going are getting time and space to exercise, so being outside in particularly good weather. As someone mentioned earlier, the good weather has been a real help and a real positive through this challenging time. Keeping on top of the schoolwork, so not getting bogged down in it or leaving it for long periods of time where there's too much of it and the expectation feels too high to be able to achieve. Good sleep and good sleep hygiene, something that has been very tough for everyone. I think we our schedules and our routines have changed so much, and sleep ultimately will be affected, which is going to affect our mood and our mental health as well. But for those who get a sort of a good routine or some form of good sleep hygiene, excuse me, it's supporting them to have better sleep or have better mental health and be more motivated and positive in their outlook. Other things that have come up are around routine and having some form of a routine within their day. It's never going to be achievable to recreate the rigid routine that maybe once was for young people, from getting up to go to school to all their sports and clubs and all the rest. That isn't achievable, and to set that goal is too much for anyone in this current landscape. But having some form of a loose routine, be that school happens at a certain time, they do the work at particular times, have breaks at particular times, or maybe to catch up with a family, have a set time with a family where they check in with each other. So finding that routine that works for them, and I suppose it's taken a wee while for everyone, but young people to get them flexible routines. Interestingly, another piece that young people have told us is the positive aspects of having pets for them. So what that may be is the companionship that comes with that, so that being connected, and the sensory aspect of a pet and minding them and looking after them. There are elements of exercise, getting out and having to walk them. So I thought it was a very interesting one that wouldn't necessarily have come up as much pre-COVID, but now I've heard come up regularly. Spending time with family, and a lot of young people are recognising as an opportunity to spend time with the family that maybe they never would have got. Maybe some people, siblings, have come home from farther away to back home, which they would never have got that time, and they're actually enjoying that. Completing hobbies or things that they never thought they'd done. A significant increase in a lot of young people studying for the theory test, which is a great thing that they're getting time to do that. Other things have been makeup courses and all sorts of different stuff that's going on. And interestingly, something that's keeping them positive and keeping them going with all these restrictions is, it was reflected back to me that knowing that they're doing what they can do. So they're social distancing, they're doing what they can do in order to support the cause, to keep their family, maybe their grandparents safe, they're staying away. And for a lot of young people, and sometimes being reminded of that is proven really positive for keeping them going and keeping them with the restrictions and abiding by them as well as staying connected with friends. It's really important, and I've heard all sorts of creative ideas of how young people are doing that. So in terms of evidence, this is what they're telling us recently. So based on her previous research and then the on the ground stuff that we're hearing at the moment is what we're hearing back from young people. So yeah, Orla, is there anything you want to add to that? Or
Yeah, just around that, I suppose a lot of the anecdotal evidence as well that we were hearing over the phone is very similar to that. And I suppose one of the pieces as well that really struck me was Laura mentioned there about young people identifying connection with their friends has been really important, and be that through Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or different forms of social media. While they're identifying that is really important, other young people are identifying the balance, needing a balance between that. So that kind of, I don't have to be on all the time, connecting with friends all the time. That sometimes it's okay for me to mute conversations and come back to them later, or identifying maybe groups that I'm involved in on WhatsApp or whatever that make me feel good, and connecting with them a little bit more, and maybe distancing myself from others then that maybe aren't I suppose as helpful for me. So
yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah, friends are still playing a high priority in there, definitely. So we're just going to touch on this week is a bit of a curve. It's called the stress vulnerability curve, and we're maybe not going to talk about it in detail, but I suppose it's just to acknowledge that when a young person's vulnerability goes up and their stress levels go up, they're more susceptible to poor mental health, or when their stress levels are down and their vulnerabilities are down, they're under the curve, which would indicate good mental health. And the reason why we bring this up is for some young people, this change may have increased their stress levels or their vulnerability to poor mental health. So maybe they don't have the support mechanisms at home or in their community, and that sense of belonging. For some, the Leaving Cert and exams and working from home is actually increasing their stress, whereas previously, maybe with the security, the routines that they had and the support in school or elsewhere, they had good mental health. But actually now, with all these changes and extra stressors and worries, maybe they're verging more towards the poor mental health. So I suppose we thought about considering this with your young people that are out there, that maybe at one stage, maybe they were in a good mental health when they had the routines and the structures around them, when actually maybe now they're maybe going into more of the poor mental health. That said, we have noticed a lot of young people, maybe their stress levels are down because they're not in the environments that maybe are affecting their mental health. So being out of school for some has actually been positive for them. It's given them a wee bit of respite in order to recover and to rest, but also to do their work as well at their own pace. So that has been positive for them. So yeah, that's a kind of brief overview of that. Or is there anything in that?
yeah, just I suppose young people as well have been identifying, I suppose, the ones that maybe Laura has been talking about, where maybe being at home actually is helping with their stress levels, and that they're maybe identifying ways that they can research different topics themselves and things like that. So I suppose it's a mix for young people in terms of, for some people, the restrictions at the moment and the different routines increase their stress levels and they need more structure. For other young people, it gives them the opportunity to learn at their own pace, to structure their own day. So it's just about identifying, I suppose, maybe where your young person is and what their maybe stress vulnerability level is at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And then no one person is the same, and that it changes, and this will change day by day and week by week, and the same with all of us. This isn't a young person specific model, and can happen any of us. So yeah, moving on, we kind of thinking about motivation, and just wanted to kind of give a wee bit of theory around motivation and the two different types. So there's extrinsic motivation and there's intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic would be when we're motivated to complete an activity in order to perform, earn the reward, and avoid punishment. So the idea of, for some people doing school work can be something that just has to be done to avoid punishment, to get in trouble or whatever detentions, or to the Leaving Cert, or in order to overcome that piece of achievement. For others, the other type of motivation is intrinsic motivation, so the act of performing activity because they find it personally rewarding, so it's very meaningful to them. It means something that is going to develop them as a person, and their interest is there. So if we were to think of two examples, one young person might read a book because they need to read it for their English exams, in order to write an essay on it. Another young person may read the same book because they want to and they're interested in the subject that it is. And one person will take in a lot more different things to the other based on their motivation. So it's important just to consider when young people are doing something or asking them to do something, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a meaning to it, or is it a more extrinsic motivation to earn a reward or avoid punishment? And I suppose it's important to really get a balance of both of them, so that there is things that have to be done and are practical, and we have to find time to do them. But there has to be a balance with the intrinsic motivation, the things that someone wants to do and find meaningful to them, and which will feed in more into what Orla's going to talk about now shortly. And guys, if you have any questions, maybe just send them in. Our presentation will finish in a few minutes, and so if you want to start sending in your questions, that would be great.
Yeah, so thanks, Laura. I suppose when I think about motivation, I suppose this is the kind of framework that comes to mind when I think about motivation and positive feelings and things like this. So this is from Professor Paul Gilbert's three-circle model of emotion regulation. So basically, I suppose it's just outlining that we have, I suppose, three major systems for emotion regulation. And I suppose when we think about motivation, or when we think about motivating young people and keeping them positive, normally what we probably closestly think about is the drive system. So that's the system in the blue here. So the drive system is, I suppose, related to acquiring resources, and these are all products of, we're all products of evolution. All these systems are inbuilt into us as humans, and these are the three main ones. But the drive system, I suppose, leads to us wanting to consume things, to pursue things, to achieve things. So when we think about young people, I suppose, in school and things like that, we think about maybe the drive system. So their attention is very much focused on acquiring those resources, on seeking out that achievement, setting goals, you know, and I suppose that kind of competitive edge and things like that is what we would associate with the drive system. So it's really activating, and it can be really exciting and enjoyable. So for example, like if you think about winning something, that's the kind of feeling that the drive system can create in it. And I suppose the drive system as well, like if we were to think about young people and what might motivate them at the moment, like if you think about young people wanting maybe more pocket money, or they want to hang out with kind of the cool gang for like social status, or they might want, I suppose, yeah, pocket money to maybe get more clothes to fit in with the crowd. I suppose young people compare themselves a lot to others. All of that is involved in the drive system. And if that drive system is balanced with the other two systems that I'm going to talk about in a minute, it can help us achieve our life goals, or I suppose guide us towards our life goals. The other system then involved in the three-circle model is the threat system. So that's down here in the orange or the red. And the purpose of this threat system, I suppose, is to protect us from safety, or to protect us from danger, and to seek out safety or avoid or overcome a threat. So when we think about threats, I suppose all our attention is focused on the threat, the danger. So young people at the moment, for example, you know, the big threat kind of out there is the COVID-19 situation. So you might notice, I suppose, that young people maybe are scanning through news items, or they're scrolling through social media, things about, you know, COVID-19. They might be feeling quite uptight and anxious, or they might be feeling angry. So it's quite an activating, or quite an activating feeling we get. So it's like feelings of anxiety or anger. And that anger can be self-directed as well. So we can maybe blame ourselves, or it can be directed at others. So it might be blaming parents for this, that, or the other. It might be blaming governments for restricting us. It could be lots of different things. So I suppose that's just generally the threat system. And sometimes the threat system fuels the drive system. And that can be, I suppose, quite an unhealthy match if it goes on over a period of time, because it's coming from constantly on, constantly driving, and it's driven out of fear rather than kind of a more settled or soothing perspective. So then the other system that we're looking at is the green system. So this is called the soothing system, or the rest and digest system. So again, with the blue system and the orange system, so the drive system and the threat system, they're very activating. They get us going. The rest and digest system is like a break in that. So it helps us to slow down. It soothes us. It's very much about connecting with ourselves and other people. It's where we feel a lot of empathy for others. It's, I suppose, defined by like caring and soothing. And we feel feelings of contentment and safeness, and we feel connected. And I suppose that third system is really important when we think about motivating young people and keeping them positive, because it balances out the other two. So without that system, I suppose it can lead to burnout and demotivation, really. So I suppose in terms of that, it's really important for us then as parents to help young people to achieve balance between these three systems. And how we do that is through compassion and compassionate relationships. And I suppose, Laura, if you just want to flick on the slides there.
Yeah.
Thanks a million. It relates back to, I suppose, how do we support, how do we build compassion with young people, and how do we help them to achieve that balance between the systems? As I was saying, it's through the compassion, the compassionate relationships, and what Laura mentioned earlier as the one good adult. So it's really important for us as that one good adult to think about what that might mean for a young person and how we can support them. So when we talk to a young person, or even through looking at the results of the My World survey, when we ask them, what does being a one good adult mean? This is what they describe to us. And if you think about maybe a person in your life that was a one good adult, and if you think about the kinds of qualities or the kinds of things that they exuded to you, to support you, to help you achieve your potential, to help you overcome obstacles in your life, these are probably some of the things that you'd say as well. You'd say maybe that one good adult, you know, was really warm, that they were non-judgmental, that they validated how you were feeling, that they noticed things about you. So maybe even sometimes when you didn't notice them yourself, they did. But also young people tell us that one good adult, like, is what we often hear from them, is they just get me, they just understand me, they just know me. And I suppose those relationships are all about connection, and it's relating back to that green system, that kind of soothing, that connected, that safe and caring relationship. And I suppose, how do we do that then? It's about active listening. So really making the space to spend time with young people, to listen to them, to paraphrase what's going on for them. So I suppose reflecting back to them what you're hearing in your own words, and to be as helpful to them as possible and not harmful, I suppose. And then, Laura, if you just want to flick on again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Laura is just going to take us through then, I suppose, kind of more step by step maybe, or more generally speaking, how we might motivate young people.
Yeah, and I suppose when we were thinking about this, myself and Orla, we really didn't want to be prescriptive about what we'd recommend, but I suppose we wanted to highlight some things that may be helpful. So one of the key things that we would work with young people is in goal setting and setting achievable goals for themselves and those around them. And I suppose at home, thinking about when we're setting young goals with young people, and it's important to set them with them, that they're achievable and realistic and something that they can achieve. At the moment, even considering the three systems model, if a young person's maybe in that threat and drive system, the goals may be something into working with their soothing system, and how do they achieve that. So one thing would be, that's practical, would be thinking about what a goal for a young person might be that study or cleaning or whatever, getting up in the morning. That it's something that's not going to be a drastic change for them, that it's something that you work and communicate together on. So for example, if a young person isn't getting up till 1 o'clock in the day and they're not being able to access their schoolwork and complete that, is there something in negotiating with them to move it back maybe 1 hour, 2 hours? Because to move that back to maybe 8 or 9 o'clock is most likely not going to be achievable for them, and they'll not achieve it, and then that can decrease motivation going forward. So it's a building thing, it's a step-by-step thing. And when considering goals, I suppose it's important to maybe think about, is there, when it's practical stuff, particularly when it's extrinsic, motivationally led, so if it's something, maybe it's a chore in the house or something that you might want the young person to do, to maybe think about it in terms of chunk time. So if it's breaking it down, maybe it's saying it for an hour per day, or 1 hour in that you might help out with, I don't know, emptying the dishwasher, or partially cleaning your room, for example. So it's maybe setting those chunk times. And something that can be really empowering and supportive would be given choices to do that, particularly with the extrinsic motivation, that piece of what would support a young person, and what do they want to do, be that, do you want to mow the lawn, or would you prefer to clean your room? Like, if there's a choice in what you would like them to do, if it's relation to home, or if it's getting up in the morning earlier, giving them choices in that. I suppose going back to some of the other stuff that young people told us, that idea of having connection with the family is still really important. They may not show that all the time of how important it is, and that they see the value in it, but I suppose it's important to create spaces for young people to engage in that. So be that a family movie night, or a themed dinner, or even then those check-in points during the day where it's maybe you agree to have a 10-minute cup tea at some point in the day, where you all just check in and see where everyone's at, because you as a family are all going through these different experiences and emotions together, but maybe at different times. So it's important to check in with each other. Exercise, encouraging it insofar as you can, and maybe inviting young people to go with you if it's an exercise, or to join you in whatever exercise that may be. Things like praising their efforts as well. For some, if their mood is low and their motivation is low, it's going to be hard sometimes to achieve the things that maybe they would normally achieve. So their activities of daily living, and when I speak about that, that might be getting up, getting their bed made, getting washed, getting dressed. So sometimes it might be important to acknowledge that with young people, and praise them, be that they've put on a bit of makeup, or they've done something with their hair, or they made something to make themselves feel good as well. So it's to praise and acknowledge that, or if they do something around the house as well. Considering adaptation, as we spoke about earlier, it's not going to be achievable to recreate the world that was. Currently, we all have been put into this new way of living very suddenly, so it's not going to be something where we can just create a routine, although I think now after 6 or 7 weeks people are starting to create for habits that they're in within their current working from home life. So I suppose it's to consider the expectations of the young person might have of themselves in this time. It's hearing a lot about expectations around study, particularly the leaving certs, that maybe young people are wanting to be equalising the amount of study that they were doing beforehand. But when you consider the 3 systems model, if they're already in a threatening drive, that won't be something that they can sustain in the long run. So working with them to maybe create something that includes elements of the soothing and affiliative system. Discussing with them the value of self-care and minding themselves and what that looks like for them. It may be that you sit down with them and discuss each other's, or as a family, each other, what do you do to feel good? Is it some people sit and binge watch Netflix, other people do a bit of mindfulness, other people like to talk to a particular friend, and to give that space and that time and know and allow for that to happen. Other frameworks we chat about in Jigsaw would be the 5 a day for good mental health. You'll see that on jigsawonline.ie. There's loads of stuff on that. And the main components of that we've kind of touched on throughout this presentation: to connect with each other in the home, to connect outside that through the various means around the technology and through our apps to connect in many different ways, to be active, so being active within getting exercise, but being active can also take other forms, gardening and getting outside and being Zumba classes or whatever, Pilates in the house. There's loads of stuff going on at the minute. Joe XP at 9 o'clock. To give to each other. So maybe you as a parent to give, and you're always giving, but noticing that you are doing that, or encouraging young people to give, to maybe help people who are in need, be that neighbours or helping a sibling out with something, to encouraging that, and to get involved. So to get involved, supporting them to get involved in maybe what's going on in the home, or if there's something, a cause online in the community, to encourage them to get involved in that. And another key thing is to, I suppose, role model in terms of it's okay to have bad days as well, and that sometimes we need to be in our soothing system, and maybe it's communicating that to young people, that that's where you're at, and opening up those conversations around that. So they're just some kind of high level stuff that we kind of were thinking about and talking to. Oh, have you any more to that, Orla, or what?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered a lot there, Laura. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of just the high level side of it. And then I suppose one of our final slides is Orla was chatting to building compassion.
Yeah, I suppose when we were talking about kind of that one good adult relationship, and I suppose building that compassion and that safe relating with young people, to give them that base to go on and achieve and reach their potential. I suppose Laura mentioned some of it already, but just in terms of what's in it for me, so tapping into that, I suppose, intrinsic motivation as well. And I suppose the only way we can do this is by giving time to young people to listen, to look for windows of opportunities, to notice what's going on with them and comment on what you see. So I've noticed maybe that you're not, or that you're feeling down at the moment, or I've noticed that you're anxious, or I've noticed, whatever you're noticing about them. Being aware of their body language, ask how you can be of help, and encourage help seeking. But I suppose the main things are as well to let them have a say, so that they have some choice in what's going on, that they feel they have a voice in what's happening. And also, I suppose, when we talk about that soothing system, or that safe kind of green zone for young people, sometimes maybe parents think that their job is almost to protect them from everything, to make sure they achieve everything. And actually, a key part of all of this is helping them learn from their failures. So actually accepting that there needs to be failure in order for young people to reach. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the esteem level, part of that esteem level is, I suppose, mastery. So that's learning from our mistakes, mastering different things. So that's really, really important for young people. And so focusing more on the effort rather than the outcome is really important there. And then I think Laura mentioned just around consistency. So I suppose helping them remember, I suppose we're very much programmed, our brains are like Velcro for negatives, and very much so for young people as well. So I suppose helping them see the positives, pointing out their strengths, helping them think about situations maybe where they've overcome obstacles before, or they've achieved something they wanted to before. How did they go about that? What did it look like? What did it feel like? What do they do? What do they think about? But also help them remember their goals. So sometimes, and for all of us at this stage, it can be easy to forget maybe what we set out to do or what our plan was. So really gently just checking in with them every now and then to remember, maybe you mentioned you were going to do this, how's that going for you? So gently reminding them. But I suppose overall, in terms of all the SMART goals and everything that Laura has been talking about, the key to all of this is that relationship between you and that young person, and everything else springs from that, I suppose. So anything else there, Laura?
No, well covered. I suppose it might be important to remember with one good adult, sometimes it's not the parent that's the one good adult that a young person might identify with, and that's okay. There's many one good adults come in many shapes and forms, from siblings, aunties, uncles, football coaches, people in the community, and that's okay. But it's important to be aware of who that might be for that young person, and maybe there isn't as much access to that person currently, and to support them in that time as well. That sense of belonging and connection might not be there as much. Yeah. Moving on, I think that's kind of our bit done. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. And if you have any questions, please send them our way.
You can type the questions into the chat box there if you've any, and only us can see them, so you needn't worry about people seeing your names or your questions or anything like that.
Okay, so someone has asked to kind of explain the stress vulnerability curve a little bit more. So I suppose if I can go back to it, that I suppose young person A would maybe be able to tolerate higher levels of stress because maybe there's less vulnerabilities within their life. Maybe their basic needs are being met, and they're safe and secure in their homes or their communities. So they may be fit to sustain higher levels of stress. So that would mean good mental health if we were to go down through the curve. Young person B, maybe they're more vulnerable, maybe their basic needs aren't being met in terms of safety, security, food, drink, connections, and support. And then potentially they're not maybe going to be as well able to handle as much stress, so therefore their vulnerability levels may be they might be more vulnerable to poor mental health. So I suppose that if we think about what we think about young people in general, this may have changed from a young person who we may have seen 6 months ago to one who we see now. They may have been less stressed when they're in school and they have that routine and they have their connections, their friends, they know what to expect each day and what's expected of them. But now with this whole change and they're changing environments, maybe they're not in school or not getting that same support, they may find that an increase in stress levels and are maybe more vulnerable to a poor mental health, and this could change. So what we might have thought previously of a young person who may be better able to manage stress, and this may have changed over the past number of weeks and months, and may change into the future as well. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Or is there anything?
Yeah, no, I'm just going through other questions here. So here is one, Laura, that just came in from a parent. So my son's mood is good at the moment, but my concern is he's spending a lot of time on his PlayStation and his sleep pattern isn't great. When I tried to motivate him to do exercise or spend time with family, he said he's enjoying playing online with his friends. Should I push it with him or leave him do what makes him happy?
It's a tricky one because it's often that is how they communicate. I suppose it's what's too much time, and if it's affecting his mental health, that's not going to help you guys as a family at this current time. And if you were to think about what Orla was saying around maybe chatting and sitting down and having a discussion, what you noticed, and see what you've reflected back there now about what you noticed in terms of his mental health, is kindly, compassionately maybe chatting to him a little bit more about that and asking him, has he noticed that change and what might be something that would support better mental health for him. And often young people have the answers in that when we sit down and have that discussion. I don't know, would you say similar, Orla?
Yeah, and I think just validating where he's at the moment. So, you know, he's saying, I suppose, that he's enjoying playing online with his friends, and absolutely that's really important, and it's really important that he's able to connect with them. It's equally important, I suppose, that his sleep isn't interrupted by that. And then, as Laura said, just sitting down and having that conversation with him around maybe what are the other things that he would like to do, or what are the other, how else might he like to spend his time. And yeah, just reflecting back to that, what you've been noticing about him and what your concern is, I suppose, in having that conversation. And then using everything Laura talked about, SMART goals and all the rest of it then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one here, and kind of maybe ties in a wee bit with that last question. Teenage boys can be particularly difficult to get them to open up and chat about their feelings. How does one get around that if you try lots, but it is, yes, okay, I am fine, etc.
Yeah. So again, I suppose that one is just about, it's coming back to the relationship. So sometimes I suppose when we have a concern for a young person, we really want them to talk and we really want them to open up to us. But sometimes it's about just letting them know that you're there if they need to talk. And sometimes it's just about letting them know what you notice as well, that, I've noticed that you're saying okay, but actually, or, I hear that you're saying to me that you're okay, but actually I'm noticing this about you. What do you think about that? And maybe it's just that they're not at the point where they want to talk, but it's just letting them know that you're there when they do decide. But also it could be just about letting them know that if they're not maybe wanting to open up to you at that particular point, that maybe there's somebody else that they might like to talk to. And it's not about taking that personally. It's just that sometimes maybe the closest people to us aren't the ones that we want to talk to at a certain point. So even just helping them identify maybe someone else that they might be close to that they can talk to, or also then different supports. Like there's loads of supports at the moment online through jigsawonline.ie. There's chats, there's text support, there's 1-800 number they can call and things like that. So sometimes it's just about recognizing that actually there's other supports they can access to if they want to talk about something.
And often in the doing, when young boys are doing something, or teenage boys and girls, when they're doing something actively and it maybe doesn't seem as head on and face on, and that often we see that in sessions. Sometimes when we ask very direct questions, that the guard goes up and it's the yes and the no answers. But when we take something in that's maybe a bit more creative, be that through art or sometimes building stuff or music or whatever that may be, you can often get a lot more from them, because it's a building trust and sort of let their guard down a wee bit more. So it's thinking about how to go about that. Maybe it's in actually just spending time and being side by side and doing something that maybe intrinsically motivates both of you as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's another one. So there's another parent. My daughter is just turning 13. She's in 6th class and she's finding the lockdown very difficult, missing her friends. She feels stressed and anxious in that she might miss out on all the normal end of primary school events. How do I keep her positive at the moment, especially as we don't know if she will go back to school? Actually, that's a really interesting question, parent, because actually when we were talking about the 3 systems model, I forgot to mention that also at the moment there's a different system that we tap into, and that system is to do with loss, sadness and grief. And actually that's I suppose something that we're hearing from young people a lot at the moment is the different losses actually that they've encountered through the COVID-19 situation. So it's things like your daughter has just mentioned, things like missing out on milestones. So young people maybe finishing up 6th class, going into first year, they're missing that transition. Also young people who've had their junior cert cancelled, actually they're missing out, they feel on a bit of a milestone and a whole kind of celebration with their friends and things like that. And absolutely, there's a lot of loss associated with the different routines and the different things that are going on at the moment, and that sense of missing out. So definitely, instead of actually trying to keep her positive, what really you're doing at the moment, or what you, I suppose, might be helpful, is to validate, actually, there are a lot of losses associated with it at the moment, and maybe looking at ways, I suppose, of creating memories or doing things in a different way, or connecting with others, or maybe even linking in with other students and things around it to see, is there some way of marking that? But definitely acknowledging that there is a sense of loss and sadness at the moment, and that's okay, and that's very much expected. at this time as well.
Yeah, definitely. What do you do if you set an hour of a chore a day and they still don't do it? This came in from a parent. Yeah, tricky one. I suppose it might be in thinking about who the young person is, what are they motivated by, thinking about their system that they might be in. Are they in a soothing system more so, or are they in a threat drive, or where are they at? So it's thinking about the individual, maybe then considering the task. What's the task that's been asked of them? Is it too big for them? Is it something that they can't start it because maybe it's too challenging? What's the time limit on it? And we talked about we talked about the rigidity of routines, that maybe young people need a wee bit more time with that, and maybe letting them know. And there may be consequences to not doing it as well. Depends how things roll in your home, but there may be consequences of not doing that chore, and it may be worthwhile considering what the expectations are as a family during this time, that this is a tough time for everyone, and sitting down with that young person and what you as a family expect of each other, practically, and then what consequences there might be for that. So definitely sitting down thinking about what the chore is. Is there a way of breaking that down or spreading it out over different periods of time? Considering what time of day can affect how a young person will work within those things being set of them. Some people work better in the morning, others in the evening. And ask them and discuss, and that whole piece around the relationship. You've said you ask them to do something, and asking them the reasons why, without blaming, and figuring out where they're at, and maybe there's choices in the chores that they can do. But I know it can get very frustrating when it's just like my brother would say, in a minute, and the minute never comes. So just suppose minding your own self and where you're sitting at within all that, and your frustrations too. Yeah.
There is an interesting one, Laura. Coming another parent. We have a reward schedule, and even pay kids for chores. You must be broke at this stage, I'd say. But they are not interested. They were for the first week, but not so much now. I still need them to do chores though. Any recommendations? So yeah, Laura, I think that's coming back to.
But I don't think that's a good idea.
Say again, sorry?
I'd say increase the pay, but I don't think that's a sustainable idea, is it? And maybe it's sitting down and chatting to them about what's required and the expectations within the home in order to work, and maybe there's consequences that occur within that, but maybe in giving them choices about how to do it or when they do it, but the time frame might be something that is a wee bit wider than normal. And I think that's important, to give them that flexibility, but making sure to return to it, and if there is agreed consequences, to continue with them, and if they're not being done, it's important. It's asking the questions, the how comes and what happened and what could we do for again, because these need to be done. And I think it's working as a team. You guys are at home together and everyone's figuring it out. So working as a team within that, and reminding young people around that as well. Too, yeah. Okay, I have one. It's interesting and something that can come up quite regularly at particular times of year. But Orla, how can a parent best support a child who does not get his or her first choice in university?
Yeah, I suppose that's a really tough one. And again, I suppose it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, as I suppose the relationship being really key in it. And I suppose one of the most difficult things for parents and for all of us really is to, I suppose, see a young person experience disappointment or a sense of failure as such. And I suppose it's important to acknowledge that disappointment, and that while it mightn't be their first choice, they do have their second choice. But I suppose it comes back to, again, just acknowledging the effort that a young person has put in. And as I say, really just acknowledging the disappointment and keeping those lines of communication open. And yeah, focusing on their strengths and the hard work that has stood to them before and that will stand to them again.
Definitely.
Yeah, anything else to add to that, Laura?
Yeah, no, I think that's it, well covered. It's acknowledgement where they're at and that there's sadness or disappointment there. And then I suppose considering the future focus and where they're going, if it's their second or third choice, and where that might lead them to. And I suppose reminding them that our journeys, sometimes young people think the journeys are straight, and it's important to remind them that it's all a path, and there's crossroads, and we break down in the middle of it all, and we need support, and we need gas, and all those sort of things. It's important to kind of sometimes remind them that in a very gentle sort of way, while acknowledging it, that it's a crossroads that they're at.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all my questions.
Yeah, I think that's most anyway. If there are any outstanding ones, or if someone has a burning one, I think an email.
Yeah.
We'll get back to them individually if they're pressing. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it, Laura, is it? Yeah.
I think so. Will we call it a day?
Yeah. Just a reminder, I suppose, to everyone, first of all, thanks a million for linking into the webinar this evening. I hope it was helpful in some shape or form for you and the young people that you're supporting at the moment. And just to remind everyone as well that a survey will pop up at the end as well, so we'd really appreciate any feedback or comments if you want to fill that in, and if not now, it'll be emailed to you later on as well. I think tomorrow maybe. So just to fill that out if you get a chance, that'd be great. And also just to say there will be a recording of this, so if you missed anything or you weren't sure about something, you can look at it again anyway. It'll be up on the jigsawonline.ie, which you can go to look at it if you need to.
There's loads of information and support on jigsawonline.ie, and information on our helpline, and support for young people as well. And maybe it might be encouraging them to just have a check on that. There's loads of various interactive ways to engage with young people on that, so have a look. That's us. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.